This is Podnutz Daily for June 10th, 2008. Now, as you may or may not know, I started doing this podcast as a live video podcast starting 2 days ago. So if you go to podnutzdaily.com at 6 p.m. Eastern Standard Time, Monday through Friday, you can watch the live video feed. That being said, there's still a few things I need to work out to get the whole process perfected. The audio quality of the actual podcast is going to be lower today than normal, and I should have that fixed up for tomorrow. So if you could bear with the low audio quality today, sorry about that, and I appreciate you hanging in there. So now I'm going to play the actual feed from earlier today for Podnutz Daily. Welcome to Podnutz Daily for June 10th, 2008. This is the second video podcast we're doing for Podnutz Daily. Thanks everybody who's watching, and thanks everybody who's going to watch later. We have a chat room here. If you go to podnutzdaily.com and look at the Ustream video that I have on the homepage there, right under there's a link to get to the chat room. So, you could join in on that if you want, and you could chat with everybody in there and trade advice and tips or make fun of me or whatever you want to do. So here we go. I'm going to start talking about the computers I worked on today. First computer I had today was an HP. A customer brought it in because the drive was not recognizable. He had a DVD drive, and he said whenever he turned his computer on, it was as if the computer didn't even know the DVD drive was there. Okay, so when somebody tells me that, first thing I look for is actual physical problem, like cable not plugged in, or the drive might be physically bad. So check the cables. All the cables were plugged in fine. His jumper setting was set a little funny, but I don't think this had anything to do with it. His jumper setting was set to slave, but it was the only drive on that whole cable. Usually how you want to have that set up is the device on the end of an IDE cable is the master. The second one in is the slave. You could either do it that way, or you could set them both to cable select, in which case it wouldn't even matter. So that check. Well, we changed the jumper on that, thinking that might be the problem. We put the jumper to master because it was the only drive on the cable. Started the computer up. Computer found the drive just fine in the BIOS, but when Windows started up, drive wasn't there. Didn't even come up. So if you clicked on my computer, there was no icon for it. Was basically what I'm trying to say. All right. So computer didn't recognize DVD drive. Started up Windows, still no DVD drive showing up in my computer. So I ran into this problem with a couple computers in the past, and this always seems to be the fix that does it. First of all, if you go into the control panel, you may see that the device driver for that CD or DVD drive is malfunctioning. In other words, it has the yellow exclamation mark next to it. So just go ahead and see if it's a driver problem, first of all, but it's not usually the case. But if you can install the driver properly and it goes in fine, and then you reboot the computer and everything's fine, then you're good to go. If not, here's what you have to do. Usually when somebody installs DVD authoring software or a program that utilizes the CD drive in any way having to do with recording, it puts entries into the registry that could cause the computer to not see the drive if it gets corrupted in some way. And I don't know the exact registry key, but what you're looking for basically in the registry, and I would recommend going on the forums or just waiting for the show notes to come out. I'll give you a more detailed explanation. You're looking for an entry in the registry key that says, oh gosh, what is it? Lower drive? No, lower. It's something lower and higher something. Anyway, I'll have it in the show notes. But if you delete the lower and higher entries out of that registry key, reboot the computer, usually it finds that DVD or CD drive, no problem, and it works great. It's just some DVD and CD authoring software like to put those entries in, and it gets messed up somehow. I don't know exactly how it gets to that point, but I know that that's usually the cause of it. So I'll put the exact explanation in the show notes, but that's a general idea. Lower and upper something. Okay, I'll think of it later. Second computer was not much happening today, by the way, but second computer was pretty much a piece of cake. Guy came in, had an old Celeron, or it was a Pentium 3. It was just old, and he has running Windows ME, and every time he started Windows, moved the mouse around, the mouse would just jitter all over the place, and you couldn't, and it would constantly be pressing the left button of the mouse, and it would seem almost obvious that it was something was wrong with the mouse, but we plugged in another mouse to the PS2 port in the back of the computer, and the same problem happened with the other mouse. So you might think it's software at that point. It could be, or it could be something wrong with the port on the motherboard for the mouse, because when we plugged in a USB mouse, the problem went away. So at that point, with a computer that old, you don't ask questions, you don't replace the motherboard, you just use a USB mouse, and that's a quick and cheap, easy way to handle that problem. This is going to be a short show today because I only have one more thing to talk about. It's not even that extensive. Had a guy come in with a hard drive. He had an external hard drive, and he accidentally dropped it. Now, it was in the external hard drive case, but it's still, when you drop a hard drive, even if it's in the case, you're still probably going to suffer some damage. So I powered on the hard drive in the case, I held it up to my ear, and I heard the dreaded clicking of a hard drive. So there's definitely hard drives clicking, and in my experience, you guys might know of some other tips, and maybe if anybody's listening in the chat room, you could tell me. On a clicking hard drive, unless you actually open that baby up and get the platters out and have the equipment to actually, in a room to actually do that, I don't know if there's any way to easily fix that. A lot of times SpinRite won't even recognize the drive when it's clicking. Hey, anybody in the chat room know of hard drive fix when the hard drive is clicking? Anyway, if you do, post a comment on Podnutz Daily, or or go into Podnutz forums at podnutz.com/forums and start a post on it, or start a thread on it. Okay, that's all the info I have for you today. Sorry it's a short show. It was just a slow day today. Tomorrow we'll have much more, but don't tune out yet. Let's try to get a call in.
I'm going to cut off the podcast there for today. What happened next was I actually tried to get a Skype caller in, and Gary Boyso, I hope I'm saying his name right, did call me, but the audio was not being recorded, so you couldn't hear him. I could tell you his question, though. He asked, he has laptops with the Windows Certificate of Authenticity, COA, on all the bottoms of the laptops. The code is actually there, but he doesn't have, it's for Windows XP, but he doesn't have the Windows XP disks. He was wondering how he can actually use those codes, if he could use a certain Windows XP disk that will work with those codes, and to register them properly through that. Personally, I didn't know the answer to that question. I know in an earlier podcast, me and Mike Petro were talking about that subject, and Mike is more knowledgeable on the subject than I am. So I'm